My son, Caleb, poured beer all over my face at my own birthday party, and my grandkids just watched. They laughed. For years, I gave him everything, my time, my money, even the deed to my house. But in that one moment, with cheap lager dripping from my chin, I realized I hadn't raised a son, I had raised a vulture. He thought I was just a weak old man he could push around. He was wrong. I smiled, wiped the beer from my eyes, and made a promise to myself. My revenge wouldn't be loud or angry. It would be quiet, legal, and it would take away everything he thought was his. This was just the beginning of his lesson. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. It helps more than you know. Now, let me tell you how a simple auto mechanic from Ohio dismantled his own son's life, piece by painful piece. It was my 68th birthday. I sat in Caleb's sterile living room, the vanilla cake I'd baked sitting untouched on the coffee table. His wife, Brenda, scrolled on her phone, while my grandkids, Lily and Sam, were absorbed in a video game. Caleb, already on his third beer, slurred his words. All I wanted was a single-family photo. When I asked, he let out a harsh laugh. "You want a memory, Dad? Here's one you won't forget." He stood over me, a cruel smirk twisting his face, and tipped the can of cheap lager. The cold, sticky liquid cascaded over my head, soaking my hair and my shirt. Through the sting in my eyes, I saw my own grandchildren laughing. I didn't move. I just sat there, drenched, as something inside me shattered and something cold and hard took its place. The laughter in the room felt like stones being thrown at me. I slowly wiped the beer from my face, my hand trembling not from fear, but from a sudden, icy rage. I looked directly into his eyes and said only 6 words. "You'll remember this day, son." The drive home was a silent, agonizing blur of streetlights. The foul, sweet smell of stale beer filled my old truck, a constant reminder of the humiliation. Every red light felt like an eternity, forcing me to replay the scene. The shock of the cold liquid, the sound of my grandchildren's laughter, the utter contempt in Caleb's eyes. I thought of all the sacrifices, the double shifts, the missed vacations, all to give him a better life. How did the little boy who used to hold my hand in the garage become this stranger? When I finally pulled into my driveway, my neighbor, Mrs. Dean, was watering her petunias. She took one look at my soaked shirt, and her face filled with concern. "Franklin, what on earth happened?" I couldn't tell her the whole ugly truth. I just shook my head, the words feeling like gravel in my throat. He finally showed me who he is. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked into my garage, the place where I'd built my life, and opened my old, heavy toolbox. For the first time, I wasn't looking for a tool to fix a car. I was looking for a tool to fix my son. The heavy lid of the toolbox creaked open, releasing the familiar scent of oil and metal. Beneath the wrenches and sockets lay the artifacts of a life I thought I had built. There was Caleb's first toy car, its red paint chipped, and a worn photograph of us at the old auto shop, him perched on my shoulders, both of us grinning. At the very bottom, tucked away, was a folded envelope with the stark label, "Deed Transfer." 2 years ago, in a foolish attempt to make his life easier, I had signed my paid-off house over to him. I still paid every single bill, property taxes, insurance, utilities, while he held the legal title. That paper, once a symbol of my fatherly provision, now felt like a hot coal in my hands. He legally owned the roof over my head. He thought that deed gave him all the power, that I was just a tenant in my own home. I decided right then, standing in the cold silence of my garage, that I would turn that very law he was counting on into my weapon. He wanted to play by the rules? Fine. I'd show him how the game was really played. The next morning, my mind was a machine, turning over the gears of a plan. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Tom Keene's office. A voice answered. Tom was an old friend and a straight-shooting lawyer who had, foolishly, helped me with that deed transfer. When he got on the line, his voice was warm. "Frank, good to hear from you. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "Tom, remember that deed transfer for my house? The one putting it in Caleb's name?" There was a brief pause. "I do," he said, his tone turning cautious. "A generous move, Frank." I gripped the phone tighter. "What if I told you I wanted to undo it? But not just undo it. I want to make it sting." Tom let out a low chuckle, the sound of a man who appreciated a well-laid plan. Frank, I'm all ears. I recounted the story of my birthday, the beer, the laughter. By the time I hung up an hour later, the anger in my chest had cooled into a cold, hard strategy. I had a legal roadmap. Step 1 was simple but crucial. I needed to get Caleb to show me his greed, preferably in writing. A week crawled by. I let the silence hang, knowing it would make him more receptive when I called. I forced a weak, forgiving tone into my voice, as if the birthday incident was a misunderstanding. Caleb, son, I've been doing some thinking. I started, the lie tasting like ash. I'm getting too old for this stuff. I'm thinking of selling off all my tools and retiring fully. The shift in his voice was immediate. The bored indifference vanished, replaced by a sharp, hungry interest. Sell them? Dad, don't be stupid, he said quickly. You don't know what that stuff is worth. You'll get ripped off. His fake concern was almost comical. You should just give them to me. I'll handle it. I'll make sure you get a fair price. That was it. That was the hook. Proof of his belief that everything I had worked for was his for the taking. I played along. You might be right, son. Why don't you come over next Saturday? We can look through what's valuable together. He eagerly agreed, not knowing he was walking into a trap. I also invited someone else to come that day, Tom, my lawyer, ready to play the part of a simple, unassuming buyer. That Saturday, the garage door rumbled open, and Caleb strutted in like he already owned the place. Brenda trailed behind him, her eyes scanning my prized engine hoist. Caleb immediately started walking around, pointing at my life's work, my wrench sets, my diagnostic scanner, and pricing them out loud. He put his wife on speakerphone, and I had to listen to him brag. Yeah, honey, the big compressor alone is probably worth $1,000. The old man has no idea. I just smiled and handed him a cold soda, playing the clueless father. A few minutes later, Tom Keene arrived, dressed in a flannel shirt and worn jeans, looking every bit the part of a fellow mechanic. I introduced him as Mr. Peters. As Caleb continued his boastful inventory, Tom wandered around, discreetly holding a small digital recorder. The moment of truth came when Caleb, thinking Tom was out of earshot, said into his phone, "He's too old to know what this stuff's worth. I'll just take it all." From across the garage, Tom caught my eye and gave a subtle, confirming nod. We got him. I now had his greed on tape. I had the verbal proof. Next, I needed his signature. The following week, I put the next phase into motion. I called Caleb with an air of fatherly concern. Son, I was looking over the house paperwork, and I think we need a small update for the insurance company. Something about a maintenance authorization. I made it sound as boring and unimportant as possible. He sighed with annoyance. Dad, you always worry too much about paperwork. Fine, just bring it over. I'll sign whatever. He didn't ask to see it beforehand. His mind was already on my tools. The inheritance he felt was his. When I arrived, he was in a rush. He barely glanced at the document I placed in front of him before scrawling his signature, his pen stroke messy and impatient. He had no idea what he'd just signed. It wasn't a simple maintenance form. Hidden within the dense legal language, expertly drafted by Tom, was a revocation clause. It stated that in the event of any attempt to liquidate assets from the property without my written consent, the original deed transfer would be rendered null and void. In one careless stroke of a pen, he had just signed away his right to my house, permanently. The trap was now fully set. For the next few weeks, a deceptive calm settled. I played my part, bringing over cookies for the grandkids and fixing Caleb's lawnmower when he called. I was the same old reliable dad. But inside, something had shifted. The fiery rage was gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable focus. I was no longer an emotional victim. I was a hunter, patiently waiting. Every dismissive comment, every time Brenda looked at me with that faint air of pity, wasn't an insult anymore. It was fuel. I cataloged each slight, each moment of disrespect, storing them away as reminders of why I was doing this. He mistook my kindness for weakness, never realizing it was the camouflage for my attack. His arrogance made him blind, and his blindness made him vulnerable. It was only a matter of time before he made a mistake big enough to spring the next part of my trap. Then came the day he needed me more than ever before, the day his carefully constructed world began to wobble on its foundations. The day he called me in true, unadulterated desperation. Caleb's landscaping business was his pride, but I knew it was a house of cards built on debt. The panic call came on a rainy Tuesday. Dad, the transmission on the big truck just went. I've got 3 jobs lined up, and I'm dead in the water. I need help. He didn't ask, he demanded, expecting me to drop everything and solve his problem. This time, I paused, letting the silence stretch. I don't know, Caleb, I said slowly. That sounds like a big expense. I'll have to think about it. The line went quiet before he exploded. Think about it. What is there to think about? You owe me, old man. After all the time I spend looking out for you, taking care of you. The audacity almost made me laugh. Took care of me? He was the one draining my bank account. He was the one who treated me like a servant, a convenience to be used and discarded. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the perfect opportunity created by his own arrogance and desperation. I decided right then that I would help him, but it wouldn't be the kind of help he was used to. I was going to give him just enough rope to hang himself. After letting him panic for a day, I called back, my voice sounding reluctant. All right, son, I sighed. I've been thinking. I can lend you the $5,000. I could hear the relief flooding through the phone. He started thanking me profusely, the gratitude as fake as his earlier concern. Then I added the condition. There's just one thing. My lawyer says for a loan this size, we need a short agreement signed. It's just for tax reasons, you understand. Caleb didn't hesitate. Yeah, whatever. Taxes, sure. Just get the money to me, Dad. He was so focused on the cash that he didn't question the paperwork. The next day, I brought him the document and a cashier's check. He scribbled his name on the signature line without reading a single sentence. What he had just signed, in his desperate haste, was not a simple loan agreement. It was an ironclad document containing a tightly worded asset lien clause. It made all of his business equipment, his trucks, mowers, and tools, collateral for the loan, forfeit to me upon a single missed payment. I took the signed paper and drove it straight to Tom's office. The clock had officially started ticking. For the next month, I became a ghost. I let him use my money to get his truck back on the road, letting him believe he had once again played his old man for a fool. Just as I predicted, his gratitude for the loan quickly morphed back into arrogance. He even invited me for a barbecue to show off that his business was thriving again. I went. I played the part of the proud father as he flipped burgers on his new grill. Lily and Sam ran up and hugged my legs. A brief, warm reminder of what I was fighting for. For a split second, a wave of doubt washed over me. I almost backed out. But then, as I was leaving, Caleb clapped me on the shoulder, a beer in his hand. He leaned in and joked, "See, Dad? A little bit of kindness and the old man opens his wallet." I just smiled back, a cold, knowing smile he completely misunderstood. "You'll be right about that soon, son." He had no idea his loan payment was due in 1 week, a payment I knew he couldn't possibly make. He had no idea his company was about to default. He had no idea the life he knew was about to end. 3 weeks later, the dominoes fell. The first call from Caleb was frantic. His business account had been frozen. He stormed into my house an hour later, his face a mask of fury, waving a handful of bank notices. "Did you do something?" he shouted. "They're saying all my business assets are locked. They won't let me access my own money." I calmly picked up one of the letters, pretending to read it. I didn't say a word. I just looked him straight in the eye. "Remember that loan agreement I had you sign? For your truck?" A flicker of unease crossed his face. "Yeah, the tax thing. What about it?" I stood up and walked to my filing cabinet, pulling out my copy of the document. I handed it to him. "Read Clause 3B out loud for me, son." His eyes scanned the page, his lips moving silently. Then he stopped. His face drained of all color, turning a pasty, sickly white. The bravado, the anger, it all vanished, replaced by a dawning, chilling horror. That was the moment he finally realized it. His trucks, his mowers, his tools, even his business name, they were all legally mine. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He stared at the paper, then at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You set me up," he roared, his voice cracking. He crumpled the document in his fist. "You planned this all along. You used me." I remained perfectly still, my voice calm and measured, a stark contrast to his fury. "No, son. I just played by your rules. You see people as things to be used. I simply learned the game from you." Brenda, who had followed him, stood silently in the doorway, clutching Sam. Her face was pale, her eyes darting between her raging husband and me. Caleb took a step toward me, his fists clenched. I will ruin you, old man. I swear to God, I'll tell everyone what you did. You'll have nothing left. That's when I let the final piece fall into place. I looked past him, to the life he thought he had secured, the one built on my sacrifices. You already ruined me, Caleb. Years ago, when you decided respect was optional and my savings were your personal bank account. Now, I'm just finishing what you started. This isn't the end of your lesson. It's just the beginning. With the legal groundwork laid, the next step was a formality, but a necessary and painful one. I had to officially serve him notice. I typed the eviction letter myself, the words feeling both foreign and final. You are hereby notified to vacate the premises at 123 Oak Street within 30 days. I drove to my house and handed him the envelope. He tore it open, his hands shaking. As he read the single page, his expression shifted from fury to pure disbelief. A bitter, incredulous laugh escaped his lips. You're kicking me out? You wouldn't kick out your own son, your own grandkids. He gestured toward the house, as if his children were a shield that made him untouchable. I met his gaze without flinching, the memory of my birthday as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. A son doesn't treat his father the way you have. You poured beer on my face, Caleb. You let your children laugh while you did it. That's not a son. That's a stranger living in my house. He just shook his head, the bitter laugh returning. You'll regret this, old man. You'll be all alone. He threw the notice on the ground and stormed inside, slamming the door. A week later, there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find Lily and Sam on my porch, looking uncertain and scared. They were alone. Lily, always the mature one, held out a crumpled drawing. Mom dropped us off down the street, she said quietly. She said to tell you we were at a friend's house. Daddy is really mad. I ushered them inside, my heart aching. They were caught in a war they didn't start. We spent the afternoon in the garage, not talking about the fighting, but just being together. I showed Sam how to use a screwdriver and helped Lily fix the chain on her bike. As they were leaving, Lily suddenly turned and gave me a fierce hug. Grandpa, she whispered, why is Daddy so mad at you? I knelt down to her level, my old knees protesting. I chose my words carefully. Honey, sometimes in a family, love means teaching someone right from wrong, even when it's hard. She nodded, as if she understood more than she was letting on. That simple, heartfelt hug from my granddaughter felt like the first ray of sunshine after a long storm. It would soon change everything, because that moment of pure, honest connection was caught on camera. The video arrived in my email a few days later. The subject line was simply, for your protection. I clicked play, and my own living room appeared, the footage shaky, filmed on a smartphone. It was from my birthday. I watched as the scene unfolded again. Caleb's cruel words, the can tipping, the beer splashing over my face, the sound of my grandkids' laughter. The camera then panned to Brenda's face, where a flicker of shame was visible. The email contained more clips, Caleb screaming at me in my kitchen, his threats to ruin me. A second email followed moments later. It was from Brenda. She wrote, I've been secretly recording him for my divorce lawyer. I can't let my kids think his behavior is normal. You didn't deserve any of what he did. I'm done covering for him. Use these if you need to. I sat back, my heart breaking for my grandchildren, now facing a broken home. But Brenda had just handed me the one thing I didn't have, undeniable, visual proof of his abuse and his character. I decided right then I would use that video, not in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion. My old colleagues from the auto shop had been planning a small retirement party for me for months. It was a simple affair at the community hall. Caleb wasn't invited, but he showed up anyway, reeking of alcohol. He stormed to the front of the room, interrupting his speech. Don't listen to him, he slurred, pointing a shaking finger at me. This man is a thief. He stole my business and is trying to make my family homeless. A shocked silence fell over the room. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. This was the moment. I had come prepared. I calmly walked to the stage and took the microphone. My son is right about one thing, I said. There is a story here, but I think you should see it for yourselves. I plugged my phone into the projector. Instead of old photos, the bright, clear video of my birthday filled the large screen. The entire room fell silent as they watched my son pour beer over my head while my grandchildren laughed. A collective gasp was audible. Caleb stumbled backward, his drunken bravado evaporating under the weight of 200 judging eyes. He was out the door before the clip even ended, utterly humiliated. The morning after the party, my phone was quiet. The public humiliation had done its job. Brenda had officially moved out with the kids, taking refuge at her sister's house. Caleb was alone, left to face the consequences. I should have felt a sense of triumph. I had won. But as I sat in my kitchen, all I felt was a profound, hollow emptiness. Revenge, it turned out, was a lonely victory. Just as the weight of it all began to settle on me, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it. "Grandpa, Mom told me what happened. You didn't deserve that. I'm proud of you. Love, Lily." I read the message once, then twice, my old eyes blurring with tears. That one single text from my granddaughter, a simple validation of my pain, healed a part of me I thought was broken forever. It was a warmth that money could never buy and revenge could never provide. The anger that had fueled me for months finally began to recede, replaced by a quiet resolve. Still, my plan wasn't quite complete. One last, final move remained to secure my grandchildren's future, protecting them from the fallout of their father's mistakes. A few days later, I was back in Tom Keene's office. The leather chair felt more comfortable this time. My focus had shifted. "Tom," I began, "I'm done with the fight. Now I want to build something. I want to give everything, the house, the business assets, to my grandkids. But I want to make sure Caleb can never touch a single penny." Tom nodded, a slow, understanding smile spreading across his face. "A trust," he said simply. "An irrevocable trust. We can set it up so the assets are managed for Lily and Sam until they turn 25. He explained the legalities. We would draft a document so ironclad it would lock Caleb out completely. It would dictate that if he ever tried to legally contest it, if he even hired a lawyer to question its validity, he would automatically forfeit any potential claim, and his share would be absorbed by his children's. It was the ultimate checkmate. The very act of fighting it would ensure his defeat. After we finalized the paperwork, I mailed a certified copy to Caleb. I made sure the official trust seal, a shiny gold sticker, was prominently displayed. It wasn't just a legal document. It was a final statement. The call came that night, just as I knew it would. The fury in Caleb's voice was something primal. "You can't do this," he screamed. "That's my inheritance. That's my kids' money, and you're stealing it from them to control them." I let him yell, holding the phone away from my ear. My own voice, when I finally spoke, was quiet and steady. "It was never your inheritance, Caleb. It was my life's work. And I'm not controlling them. I'm protecting them. From you." The line went silent for a moment, and I could hear his ragged breathing. He had run out of arguments. "You'll die alone, old man," he finally spat, the words meant to be his ultimate weapon. I thought of Lily's text message, of the bikes I was fixing for neighborhood kids, of the peace I was slowly finding. "Maybe I will," I said calmly, "but I'll die respected, which is more than you can say right now." He screamed a few more incoherent curses before slamming the phone down. I sat in the silence, listening to the comforting hum of my old refrigerator. 2 weeks passed. Then, one evening, there was a knock on my door. It was Caleb, and he was sober. He stood on my porch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a deep-set weariness. His eyes were red-rimmed, but clear of alcohol. His clothes were wrinkled, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Dad," he said, his voice quiet and raspy. "I messed up. I really, really messed up." It was the closest thing to an admission of guilt I'd heard in a decade. I nodded slowly, but I didn't open the screen door. I kept that barrier between us. "You think saying you're sorry is enough to fix all this, Caleb?" He shook his head, his gaze dropping to the worn welcome mat. "No," he admitted. "I know it doesn't. But I had to start somewhere. I had to try." The words hung in the cool evening air. They weren't a demand or an excuse. They sounded like a genuine, if clumsy, first step. I thought for a long moment, not about the beer or the money, but about the little boy in the photograph. "Then don't start with me," I told him, my voice firm but not unkind. "Start by fixing what you broke. Go fix your relationship with your kids." He looked up, nodding slowly, turned, and walked away. And for the first time, he didn't shout back. A full year passed in quiet solitude. I fell into a new rhythm, one not dictated by Caleb's crises. I sold the landscaping equipment, and put the money into the trust for Lily and Sam. I kept my house and filled its silence with new purpose. I started fixing up old, discarded bicycles in my garage, tuning them up and giving them away for free to kids in the neighborhood. The joy on their faces was a payment greater than any check Caleb could have written. It felt good to be building something again, to be known as Mr. Frank, the bike man. I saw Lily sometimes at her school plays or soccer games. I'd sit in the back, and she'd always spot me, giving me a small, secret wave. We didn't talk, but the connection was there, a silent thread of understanding. Then one sunny afternoon, she came by the house alone, holding a small, neatly wrapped box. She held it out to me with both hands, her expression serious. "Mom and I thought you should have this," she said. I took the box, my calloused fingers fumbling with the ribbon. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue paper, was something that made me cry. It was a photograph, the old one from my toolbox, of me with a little boy perched on my shoulders at the auto shop. But it was no longer faded and creased. It had been professionally restored, the colors vibrant, the memory sharp and clear. It was housed in a simple, new wooden frame. Tucked into the corner was a small, handwritten note. "Love, Lily." I looked up at my granddaughter, my vision blurred by sudden tears. "Mom said you deserve this more than him," she said softly. "She said you're the one who remembers what family is supposed to be." I couldn't speak. I just pulled her into a tight hug, my rough mechanic's shirt pressing against her small frame. "You're the best part of him, Lily," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Never forget that." As she rode away on the bike I had fixed for her, I placed the frame on the mantel, right next to a picture of my late wife. For the first time, looking at that photo didn't bring sorrow for the son I had lost. It brought gratitude for the granddaughter I had. A profound peace settled over me. The war was over, until a letter arrived the next morning. The envelope was plain, the stamp crooked. My first instinct was to throw it away, to not let him disturb the peace I had found. But curiosity, or some lingering sliver of fatherly duty, made me open it. The letter wasn't angry. It was just a few pages, handwritten on simple lined paper. The words were surprisingly clear. He wrote that after losing everything, he had finally hit rock bottom. He had checked himself into a rehab facility in another state. He had a sponsor. He was working a simple manual labor job and paying his own rent for the first time in his adult life. He didn't ask for money or for the house back. He just wrote about the long nights he spent thinking about where he went wrong. He wanted to apologize, not just for the beer, but for years of selfishness. He ended the letter with a sentence that struck me to my core. "I finally understand respect, Dad. It's not something you demand. It's something you have to earn. And I know I have a lifetime of earning to do." I folded the letter carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. He wasn't the same man. I decided I had to see for myself. I would visit him one last time. The rehab center was a modest, clean building nestled in a quiet town. When I walked into the visitation room, Caleb was already sitting there. He looked different. The anger and arrogance had been stripped away, leaving behind someone who looked quieter and more human. He stood when he saw me, but he didn't rush forward. He just stood there, his hands clasped awkwardly. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice even and sober. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the unspoken weight of years between us. Finally, he looked me in the eye. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Dad. I know that. I did unforgivable things." I thought about the man who had poured beer on my face, the boy in the photograph, and the broken man before me. "No, you don't," I replied, my voice gentle but firm. "But you do deserve a chance to earn it. For yourself and for your kids." We talked for an hour, not about the past, but about the future. His sobriety, his hopes of one day being a father Lily and Sam could be proud of. Before I left, we shook hands. The same hand that had once humiliated me now felt steady in mine. As I walked out, a quiet thought settled in my mind. Revenge had finished one story, but perhaps forgiveness had just started the next.